name is Jennifer Stirrup. We're going to be looking at Cortana Analytics for the next hour and a half or so. Now, I don't have any slides, and the reason for that is I was hoping we'd have more an interactive hands-on experience. So I'm going to tell you how to set up Cortana Analytics. To do that, you need an Azure machine learning, you need an Azure subscription in order to do that. So I'll talk my way through it if anybody likes to walk along with me. If not, it's okay. I'm going to go through everything, and hopefully that will encourage you to go and try it out for yourself. So Cortana Analytics is basically a wrapper term for lots of different Azure technologies. Now, when we set up Cortana, there's lots of components involved in that. We have event hubs, we've got storage, we've got machine learning in there, we've got Power BI. So what happens is your business decision maker looks at all these moving parts and thinks, I don't know how to buy these, I don't know how to put them together. It's not very marketing friendly. So that's my own reasoning behind them calling this whole solution Cortana. It's something that's easily accessible, people know what it is, and it continues the great Microsoft tradition of using the same words to mean two different things, because that's what they like to do. So I sometimes present at SQL Saturday events with my 10-year-old, and he gets really excited when I say I'm going to talk about Cortana. So he thinks we're talking about Halo. So boy, is he disappointed. So if you want to follow along with me, there is Cortana Analytics, the main website. Analytics, and I will show you where that is. So the idea is it's a wrapper that allows you to use, mainly focused in two areas. One is big data. Yeah. So Cortana is all about data at machine scale, not necessarily little data, although little data can be just as valuable. And the idea is also it's about advanced analytics, and also about making the results of those analytics accessible to the users. Okay. So if you want to join with me, you can go to start.cortanaanalytics.com. And that's that bit there. So I'm going to start that in a new browser. Let's see if I can get that to work. Cortana Analytics. Okay, it's a problem with security certificate, never mind. We'll just keep going. Now, I don't have any solutions in this one, so what I'm going to do is open it in a new tab. Now, it's a bit like Azure ML. Azure ML has got lots of solution templates, basically to get you started. Now, at the moment, there's only 3 templates available to you in Cortana Analytics to allow you to play with them. That's all that's there. The one that we're going to look at is vehicle telemetry. So there's no connected cows or connected badgers here. Connected cows is the favourite one for the keynotes. We're going to stick with cars. That will be easier. Air travel is another one as well. Predictive maintenance for aircraft. And then we've got a third example here for demand forecasting. So when we click on the vehicle telemetry analytics one, now, sorry, if I get any sound here, is he? He's not listening, is he? I'll try it without sound. I'm not sure we're going to need it. So the idea, if we all hear about connected cars, so the idea is that their vehicles are now transmitting all sorts of data. There's an estimation that more or less all new cars will be built with connectivity by 2020. I don't know if you saw the news yesterday that a Nokia engineer had copied and pasted some code from Stack Overflow, and it went into one of the Nokia updates for the cars. Did you see that? No, it was in the news. Thought, wow, someone's in a lot of trouble. Basically, if you don't understand what the code is, don't copy and paste it. So the idea is we've got Cortana Analytics for vehicle telemetry. I'll go through this in more detail, but all it's a bit like SSIS again. All it's doing is connecting together a lot of the different components that you would need in order to build a solution which can read data from cars, analyse it, predict it, and then visualise it as well. So it will use streaming analytics, which I'm going to take you through, which is all about trying to analyse data which is coming at you very, very quickly, very low latency data. Then we can start to build dashboards with it as well. And we can have all sorts of underlying data sources. That query is actually Hive. So it's taking data that's stored in Hadoop, and then it's actually doing something with the data and structuring it. So here's a very quick overview of Power BI. We can have a look if is anyone following along with me? No? Yeah? Yeah, okay, good one. One brave soul, well done. We're going to build that dashboard in Power BI, and I'll show you how we're going to get it to work. So that's our connected car. Obviously, we're going to look at all sorts of metrics from it, such as tyre pressure. We're going to take the usage. They can try and work out if people are driving aggressively as well. World's land speed record. So the idea is that we've got our solution templates as well. Okay. Okay, so if you're following along with me, when we go to sorry, I must have closed that. Think about it. So basically you can go on the right hand side of the page. Sorry, come on. So we can actually create more solutions as well. So we go to the plus sign, the top right hand side. Then we click on plus. That takes us off to the gallery. So the example we're using is the vehicle telemetry analytics one. Then we can deploy the solution. When we deploy, it asks us for a name for our solution. And basically the name of that solution will be the same name as the Azure SQL DB it would generate behind the scenes. I should warn that if you are following along with me and you've got an Azure subscription, it's very expensive to run all the parts. So when you're done, delete everything, because you'll be charged for it and you'll be charged a lot, and you'll burn through a lot of MSDN credits or Azure credits or partner credits or whatever you actually happen to have. So you fill in your solution name, then you choose your subscription. You see I've got quite a few subscriptions here. So you just pick the one that you intend to use. Then basically agree to terms and conditions, and then you click on next, and then it will go and deploy everything for you. So I'm going to work in Chrome. I've got all my stuff open here. Now, the solution itself will take about 20 minutes to deploy. So if you're following along with me, if you click on deploy, I'm going to talk about the various component parts, and by the time I've done that, hopefully your stuff will be deployed. Mine's already done already. So I'm going to do an overview of all the different parts, and then we'll have a look at them and see how they look in Azure, in the Azure portal. So the first thing is there's a small vehicle simulator. And what that does is, I'm just going to download it. It's a small .NET package, and all it's going to do is act as a simulator to generate data. That's all that's going to do. It's not going to be anything very exciting, but I'll show you it anyway. And basically you're looking for the car generator exe file. Application. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's sending data up to the cloud, just generating data randomly on my machine. So it's generating things like the speed, it's generating the location, it's generating and just all sorts of information. I'm going to keep that running so that by the time we see it in Power BI, I've actually got some data to show you. I'm going to leave that run. So the first thing that we can see here is I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. It's a nice bright green colour. I hope you can see it all right. It's an Azure Event Hub. Now, what an Azure Event Hub is just a way of allowing Azure to take data in. It's a touch point. Where does the data go when it reaches Azure? So that's what Event Hub does. It's picking up events, and then it will be able to do things with those events afterwards. But the main point is just acting as, in the meantime, it's just acting as a touch point for the events to go to. They need to go somewhere in Azure, and that's what that's for. So how does that actually look? We're going to open it, have a quick look, and you can see. It's going to ask me to sign into my account, which is not that one. Then it's going to be my personal account. So it will be, try a different one. So I sometimes have this, I've got so many logins. It's definitely not that one. Sorry. Right, just got the right one now. I just use multi-factor authentication, so it's I'm not actually checking my phone while I speak to you. That should be approved now. Okay, so we can actually map what we see in the Cortana Analytics dashboard with what we see in Azure. Now, you'll probably be aware there's two different modes you can look at Azure. One is the old way of doing it, which is the Azure the Service Model, which is the old one. We're now moving on to the Azure Resource Manager. It's basically it's an architectural difference. The new Azure Resource Manager is much more easily able to handle dealing with lots of different things at the same time. So they've got rid of some dependencies, and it's made much more efficient. So this is just done in this portal because not everything has been moved over to the Azure Resource Model at the minute. I think there's a bit of a race on to see to make sure people are not going to be last. Who wants to be last in this when all your friends are over in the groovy new Azure portal? So these are, I'm just going to zoom in. These are some of the elements that are used in Cortana. Not all of them, some of them are in the new portal. I know it's a bit confusing. We'll just step through them as we find them. So what we've got here, a few things. We've got a storage account. So basically it needs somewhere to store the data. And then we've got a running streaming analytics job. And what that's basically going to do is it's going to receive the data and do things with that data. We'll look at that in more detail in a second. And then we've actually got this dashboard here, which is the new Azure portal. I'm going to look at all resources, and I'm going to look for my event hub. So it's a bit slow. Let's try again. All right, so this is a touch point at receiving data here. So we've got some pipelines in here with the data. Should be there. So I know it's very code heavy. I'll just see if we can find one of them that's a bit easier to read. Oh, it's all pretty much the same. All right, so what this is doing is it's using HT Insight Hive, and we've got the location of the scripts here. Now, if something is you see a file with the file type HQL, then that means Hive Query Language. So basically that's a lens or a structuring tool for big data sources. That's what that is. We can see all this is doing. Edinburgh Cars is the name of my Cortana Analytics workspace. Basically it's just collecting the data and it's going to write it towards an endpoint. So now if we go back to Cortana Analytics, I'm just going to check it's still sending data, so that's good. So now it's going to go to Streaming Analytics. And what Streaming Analytics does is it allows real-time streaming on millions of events. And that will be over seconds, that sort of latency, sort of real-time latency. It's used mainly for batch analytics. You can it's mainly used for real-time analytics. Now you can use Azure Streaming Analytics, or if you want to roll your own, you could use Apache Spark, which was released this week. If you're on Twitter, you'll have maybe noticed Joseph Syros talking a lot about that. Whatever one you use is your preference. Maybe you've already got Spark already in place, and you just want to start to use it in the cloud and use it in Azure, so you could go down that way, or you could go down the route of using Streaming Analytics. The thing I will say about Streaming Analytics is it's very easy to use. I'm just going to show you what the queries look like now. So, Streaming Analytics. So we can see it in the old portal. It says we can edit the query while it's running. So I'm just going to see if I can zoom in and show it to you. Let's see if we can get it in the new. I thought I'd seen it in the new portal, and that's generally a bit easier to read. See if we can find it. Yeah, be easier to look at it in the new portal. Edinburgh Streaming Analytics, yep, okay, so let's look at that. So we can see it's obviously running at the moment. Now, one thing to notice is when I built my Cortana Analytics, I built it under the Edinburgh Cars resource group. So if you want to tear something up and tear it back down again, what you can do is delete everything aside, just delete the resource group. It will delete everything associated with that resource group. So if you're like me and you're constantly demoing things and tearing things up and down, just use different resource groups for different things. It will just help you to be clean afterwards and get rid of things. So we see we've got the inputs, we've got the query itself, and we've got the outputs. So the streaming analytics is taking inputs from two places. It's taking it from Azure Blob Storage, and it's taking it from the Event Hub. And if it's got that sort of blade aspect to the portal, so we can keep running along. So that's basically what the Event Hub, the details it needs. We can see it's using, using JSON format data. You could do all sorts of things here around. You could change the name if you wanted. You could add in a different policy, or you could tailor the subscription. I'm not going to do any of those things. Now, the Event Hub needs somewhere to put the data after it's touched the data. It needs to put it somewhere. So what we've got here is a little storage account, Blob Storage. And it's got a container. That's the name of our Cortana Analytics template, connected car. And then we can see the data itself is actually in CSV format. That's down the bottom here. So I'm just going to close those windows, and we'll have a look at the Streaming Analytics query. So all I need to do for that is click on the query. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste all of those. And if I put it in Word for Windows, it'll just be a bit easier to read, so we can see it. If we start, going to make it a lot bigger. So you probably notice straight away the Streaming Analytics query is just a select statement. This will be very familiar to you. So we've got a from, we've got an on, got a join. The interesting thing to notice is this blob sync here, which I will make it orange and then bold. So we're selecting a lot of things. So that you can see the first thing in the Streaming Analytics query is it's got select. So we are selecting. And selecting all of these column names. And we're selecting it into. And you know from your SQL background that all that's doing is selecting and doing an insert into blob sync, which is basically my blob storage. So it's taken all of this data, and it's taken it from the Event Hub source. It already knows about the Event Hub. Cortana Analytics did set everything up for us. Taking the data, putting it into blob sync. So you can see the queries are actually very, very similar to what you do in SQL already. Sorry. We can do some very limited calculations as we go along. So personally, I've found that if I try and do too much in SQL and streaming analytics, it can slow it down a little bit. So the idea of having it low latency is that you're trying to get the data in as quickly as possible. So I do try and see if I can implement the rules further downstream. Normally, it's just, that's my experience. It may have changed since I last used it, but I just found if you start to load it, it's like any SQL query basically. If you load it with lots of things, it's going to take a bit longer to do. So that was just my experience of it. It wasn't bad, but it was enough to make the customer to say, shouldn't that data be through there by now, you know, which is awkward. So, all right, so I'm just going to close that. Now we've got the outputs here. Now it's outputting the results of its query. It's doing it to blob storage, doing it to Event Hub, and it's also doing it to an Azure SQL database as well. We could try and add one, and I'll try and do that. Oh, I need to stop it first. Yeah, I'm going to stop it running. I'm going to add one. I'm going to call it Power BI. What it's going to do, it's going to output my data to Power BI. So yes, I've had this before, I remember. So Power BI is not yet supported in the Azure Preview portal. So that's frustrating. So I'm going to cancel that. And we'll go back to the other portal and get it working here. See what I mean about having to work between the two portals? Especially Power BI. Power BI should just work in the new clean portal. So I'm just going to stop it from running. Yes, I do want to stop it. And we'll put it into Power BI. So basically the old portal, we've got the same things. We've got our input, which is our blob storage, and our Event Hub. And then we've got our queries, which we looked at earlier. So we've got counts of cars, then we're doing the average, then we've got the outputs as well. So we've already got an output, which is SQL database, Event Hub, and blob storage. And I am going to add an output, which is going to be Power BI. And it's just in the middle, just there. Now, I don't know if you know, but Power BI is a push model of data. So what that means is that it's not like a pull model where the user pulls data through, they filter it in the query. Power BI is about getting the data pushed into its cache, into its container, and that's how it works. So that's why we need to specify that the data is going to get pushed into Power BI. So I click on Next. It wants to know my authorization for being a Power BI user. I most certainly am a Power BI user, so I'm just going to put this in here. I'm going to use my work account, so I think that's the right one. Output alias. So I'm just called everything Power BI. So whatever names you put into your Power BI settings here, you have to make sure that it matches what else you've got in the query as well. My workspace, I'm just going to put that there. So it's testing the connection to see if it works or not, and hopefully it will work. Okay. So I'm just going to take the Power BI one and I'm going to test the connection again. It says it's thinking about it. And it's connected to Power BI, so I'm happy with that. So let's go back to Cortana Analytics. So far, the ones that we've looked for, we've looked at Azure Event Hub, the touch point for the data. We've looked at streaming analytics. So that's our point where we have lots of rules that are working on the data, very low latency, real-time stream processing and millions of events. And that's basically out of the box. It's configured for you. You just need to write your SQL queries and you're good to go. Dead simple. We've looked at Power BI. And so what we can do here, if you're following along with me, is there's a few steps here. You can actually, if you click on step 1, it will download a real-time dashboard application for you. You can also download a Power BI file as well, which I'll show you how we do that as well. And there's a whole bunch of setup instructions in case you want to follow those. So if you can't try it here, you can try it at home, sorry.
So the output from stream analytics, why you're putting it back into the event hubs?
I'm not putting it back into the event hub, I'm putting it into Power BI.
But there were 3 outputs, so I can understand the SQL one because you want to store the data.
Yep.
But why back to the event hub?
I think it's going back into the event hub because it's going back into blob storage at that point. Let's have a look. So, sorry, let's go back. Sorry. Right, let's have a look. So it stopped, so let's go back to the query. That's not what we wanted. Okay, so the event hub out. Okay. I think if I'm right, I think that one, let's have a look at it. Okay. That's interesting because it says it hasn't actually created one.
Well, on the old portal, it was free.
Yeah, let's have a look. Event hub out. Provide event hub settings manually. The event hub name. No, I can't see offhand where that's going to. Anyway, if you don't mind, I'll just leave on and go with it. If you're interested, you could try this at home. You can work your way through it and see and follow along with all the pieces. All the instructions are there. No, I'm sorry, I don't see it. It just seems to be going to a bit of a dead end. Anyway, sends messages and it stops. So I'm just going to start sending messages again. So that's going. And then I'm going to start streaming analytics again. Make sure that query's running. So streaming job, and let's get the data back in. So I'm just going to start it running now. I'm just going to check to see how that looks in the new portal as well. I'll get rid of that. All resources. So it says that the job is starting, so it does look like the two portals are kind of talking about the same thing, so that's good. And this time we can see we've got 4 outputs here, and one of them is Power BI. So that one is greyed out because it's not supported in that portal, but at least we can see it's there now. So we'll keep going through the other components. So we've got the dashboard here. I want to talk about some of the other pieces. We've got the blob storage here. So Azure Blob Storage is very low cost, and it's a persistent cloud storage, which allows you to, it can be used as a basis for different analytics scenarios. You can use it in Azure ML as well, for example, if you want. Got in Cortana here. You can sometimes use it just for backing up files, for example. So it's used for all sorts of things. You can also use it as a basis for HD Insight, which is Microsoft's Hadoop-based big data analytics engine, which we'll look at in a second. Just going to think about it. I don't have access to my own content, and that's not good. Let's try that. Must be there. Let's try in here. Let's go to portal. Filter, Edinburgh. So we've got the storage account here. Right, I'm just going to decrease that down so I can see it a bit better. And then I'll zoom in. So if we click on the services, we can see in the middle, you can see exactly what we've got in each one. So in blobs for the minute, we have got, you can see connected card just here in the middle. And then when we zoom in, we can see the data that's actually on the blob storage. We get folders here, and we've got data stored in blob at the bottom. Try and see that with a dry mouth. And our scripts are in here. And these are the HQL queries that I was talking about earlier. So we can't see the queries themselves, we just got the URL to them. I wonder if we can see I'm just curious to see what happens if I put in the URL. What will that do? Hey, we can see it, that's good. So I'm excited with small things. Seeing the HQL. Right, so this is one of the queries that's been generated to access the data. So this is HQL, so it's fairly similar to SQL. We could spend all morning talking about differences between Hive and SQL, but this is more complex than it first seems. The main takeaway point is that Hive is supposed to be aimed at people who are business intelligence people. So if you write select statements, you'll be comfortable writing Hive statements because they start with select, and a lot of the keywords are very similar to what you already have. Oh no, I hate getting my photograph taken. I've got to pretend that no, I don't get my photograph taken. Anyway. So what we do with Hive is it's structuring the data that's held in the big data source. So it's very similar. You can see a lot of this will be similar to you. Create external table and give it a table name. So that's not really any different from what you see in SQL. A lot of these data types will be the same. You'll recognise what a string is. One place where it starts to get different is this bit down here, which I'm going to take off my squiggly lines. You add in extra pieces to the table definition. And basically this is the bit that starts to distinguish it from SQL, from straightforward SQL. So row format delimited fields terminated by a comma, and then lines terminated by 10, and stored as a text file and where the location is. So when you're trying to structure big data sources, you need to do a few things. You need to somehow impose a structure on something that's not structured. So in this example, it's quite easy. It's structured simply by a comma, and we have a very well-defined end of the line as a 10. You're really dealing with the data at quite a low level, and you're telling where the data is actually stored inside Hive. Now, one thing I found difficult to wrap my head around at first was the concept of a table in Hive, believe it or not. So I'm used to a SQL Server table, where we have got the data and the table are kind of in the same place. You've got metadata about the table, but you essentially you kind of see the data in the table as the same thing. They certainly do when you select it. But when you use big data sources, that's not the case. The data and the table definition are two separate things. And why is that? And the idea is because you are dealing with such big data sources, you can't just keep shoving data around like that. It could be terabytes, it could be a long time to do it, it could be distributed as well. So it's about trying to keep track of it as well. What it does mean is you can have the same data structured in many different ways, and you have different tables with the same underlying data. And that's really flexible for reporting, I think. I actually quite like that idea. It means you can start to structure the data differently according to what the business user wants to see. Different tables, same data. It means you're not repeating the data every time you generate a new table. Because if you've already got terabytes in one table, you don't want terabytes in something else if you don't need to have it. And you know what business users are like? If they can spawn new tables, they will go off and do it. I'm forever cleaning up these sort of scenarios. So that's really the key difference for a Hive. So that's really what that is. So we can start to see the Hive queries just there. Now I'm just going to close that down. So that's what the storage account is for. It's storing all sorts of things about Cortana. The Cortana implementation, it's obviously got some of the data in there. It's got zip files, generating solutions. It's got some of the Hive queries, table definitions as well. So if you look at this in your own time, then you can really have a real look around these and pick it apart. And hopefully you find it lots of fun, because I do. So that's the blob storage service. So if you're following with me, have you deployed? Is it still thinking about it?
I'm kind of a bit out of sync.
All right. Whereabouts are you?
Yeah, sorry, I just didn't have deployed. I've just been trying to set up my Power BI.
All right. Okay.
I think I'm with you.
Yeah. So it's actually need to go into the old. You need to go into the old portal to do that, and I think you can get that through this URL, because I can never remember where it is. Manage.windowsazure.com, and you need to hit that URL. I know it's very, very bitty, but once you get to that portal, I'm quite lazy because I just search for things. But if you look under all items, you can see in the middle, you'll find Stream Analytics job. You should see running, and to change it, and you just double click in the job name, and then you are going to outputs. It will want you to stop the query before you make changes, which kind of makes sense. And once you've stopped the query, it lets you add in a new one then. I'm going to stop that. Thinking about it. So I'm going to outputs. Let's see. Just did it a minute ago. Oh, it still thinks that my thing is running, that's why. But it's in there, basically, that you just need to add it in. I'm going to start mine running again. It looks a bit messed up. Okay. So I'm just going to go back to Cortana for the moment. So we've looked at our blob storage, and that's basically where some of the data is stored, where our queries are stored, and some of the default applications around this are stored as well. We've also got a vehicle catalogue data, and that's basically a reference data set, and it's stored in blob storage as well. So coming back to a question I had earlier, you can actually merge data as well in Cortana. You've got the streaming analytics, and you can merge that with the cold storage data as well. It's in blob storage. Because often you need to reconcile the data at some point anyway. You need to reconcile your hot moving data with the cold stuff, and it's about gelling it together. That's been done here in blob storage. So we've got Azure HD Insight as well. As I said, HD Insight is Apache, it's Hadoop, and it's Microsoft's distribution, which is powered by Azure. They did that in tandem with Hortonworks, so it's basically a Hortonworks version of the cloud. If you're interested in learning big data in Hortonworks, you can go to the Azure virtual machines, set up a Azure virtual machine which has got a Hortonworks sandbox on it. Brilliant way of learning. It's how I learned to do it. I had to learn it very quickly because I got a few years ago a business intelligence project where they said we've got all sorts of problems with data. I went to see them and it became very, very clear it was a big data problem, not a BI problem. I was speaking to business people who just translated it as I can't access the data I want, I can't get stuff in my reports, which is kind of traditional BI problem terminology. But actually the reason they couldn't was because of the types of data they were dealing with. So when we look at HD Insight, that's where I started to learn it because I spun up, at the time I used a Hortonworks sandbox on my laptop. It was only 2 gig, and I learned all about Hadoop and HDFS and Hive and Pig and how to connect the bits together and Barry, all the desktop. So I really recommend that you do that if you're interested. I did it on the fly. Having to learn it in front of a customer was not very good, but isn't that kind of what we all end up doing, I suppose? So go to HD Insight. I'm going to open that so you can see it. Again, it's taking me back to the old portal. Oh, it's the new one. Now, I'm going to see because it is there. Resource scripts. Right, so I'm going to log out of that one. Let me try again. Okay, that's better. Search for Edinburgh. Strange, I don't see it. Right, so I don't seem to be able to see that one. So we'll look at Azure SQL instead. It's weird. So this is basically just Azure SQL database called Connected Cars. It's a basic, just a basic database. It's in the same resource group, and the server name is just here. So it's just setting up a little Azure SQL database for us behind the scenes, and it's called Connected Car. I could try and log on to this one. I'm sort of conscious of time, so I think I'll just keep going. I'm more keen to get to the Power BI stuff. So then we've got the last thing to look at, which is Azure Machine Learning, and then we'll have a quick look at Power BI. Just thinking about it. So what we can see here, we did a quick look at Azure Machine Learning earlier. I'm just going to open this one so we can see it a bit better. So let's go through some of the components. So the data comes in, and it comes into machine learning via streaming analytics. and via blob storage as well. So they're both impinging on the machine learning experiment here. So when we go back, I need to close some of these, to the experiment, you can see here that launch column selector at this point is going to rename all columns. So it's not changing any data types or anything at this point. It's calling it, taking the columns. The first one is the vehicle identification number, the VIN, it's got the model, the timestamp, and things like the temperature. Now I'm just going to move this over a bit so we can see it a bit better. Okay. So this Azure Machine Learning is doing different things. It's looking for anomalies in the behaviour of the car. So you could use something like an anomaly to try and work out, you know, is there some predictive maintenance needs done in the car, for example. So here, doing the project columns, we can see it's just renaming a lot of things at the beginning, really. And it's cutting some of them down, like the temperature and the speed. It's taking those, and it's using those in order to score the model. So the actual model itself is a recall anomaly detection model. So that's one of the models here. So if we drag that on, oops, it's gone. It's disappeared. So if we click on it, we can see down the bottom at the right hand side, there should be a help file about that, but it's not playing ball. All right. So we've looked at all these. So what I'd like to do is start to look at the Power BI. So when we click on the Power BI dashboard element of Cortana, we see that there are a number of properties at the right-hand side. Now it's not very intuitive, but actually if you click on any of these steps, that will give you the material that you need. It will give you a sample Power BI dashboard, and it will give you a local file as well, and it will give you the setup instructions. So I'm just going to open mine. They're in my downloads here. So it's modified. Can't find it. There we go. So now what I'm going to try to do is log into Power BI itself, and we'll see if the data is actually coming through. Sorry. So I want to see if the data is coming through to Power BI. So I'm going to import or connect to the data. So let's see if we can see if it's in the desktop. It's a separate tool. You can use the console, or you can use the desktop instead. It's taking a little minute to load. Thinking about it. Okay, so this is a pre-built sample dashboard. So hopefully, okay. So the idea here is it's supposed to be in real time. What I want to do is publish this to Power BI so we can see it there. So I'm going to publish to Power BI. You'll see there's something else here, publish to Pyramid Server. So if you're interested in speaking to, learning more about Power BI, you can go and speak to the Pyramids team. I interviewed the Pyramid team last week, and it turns out some of the Pyramids team actually worked with the Power BI team to develop some of their solution. So they've got a very good close relationship, so they know Power BI extremely well. So if you're interested in knowing more about that, then I would go and have a little chat. So publish to Power BI is basically just file and then publish. I'm going to sign in. Sorry, it's all loads of sign in. So we could actually publish it to the web as well. You can embed this report for public access by anyone in the internet. So if you do a blog site or something like that, I spoke to someone recently who's using it for the company website. So it seems to work really well, I think. Oops, back. Sorry. Where did it go to? So that's actually what the data looks like at the moment, but you probably see at the bottom left-hand side under data sets. Got a small data set there, vehicle telemetry analytic. So that's our real-time data coming through. So I'm just going to try and see if we can access some of this. So I'm interested in and rather intrigued by aggressive driving. So let's see if we can find out the count of aggressive drivers, aggressive people. Okay, 4 million, that's probably a bit high. So let's look at it over the years. Now its year is actually came up as being another count. We don't want that. It should actually be in one of the axes. So what we have here is, I'm going to make it a bit bigger, the aggressive count of drivers by year. So that seems an awful lot still. So let's have a look and see if we can break it down by city. So what we see here is that according to the data, Bellevue has got the medium amount of aggressive drivers, but the most aggressive drivers are in Seattle. So we can maybe see if there's a difference by month as well. So the month isn't doing anything, it should do. Anyway, so what we can do is start to use a map in order to look at the data a bit better. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. Now the idea with Power BI, it's a bit like Spider-Man with the least amount of power, the least responsibility. So you're not able to damage or break the data in any way, you're not coding anything, it's all click and tick. And for a lot of people, that's all that they want. I've been teaching people reporting services for a long time, and there is just that set of people who just want to click and tick and just use Excel, and trying to get them to do things in reporting services is a long haul, because if you can do things quickly in Excel, then that's what people are going to do. They're just going to start throwing new columns around, they're going to start changing the data there, because when you think about it, BI projects can take such a long time to do. So what you're going to do, you're going to go and ask your IT department, and they'll help you with your reports, and it'll take a few months to do it, or are you just going to do it yourself in less than 20 minutes? and that's the reality that people live under. So Power BI is speaking to that person, I think. That they're actually just been given the opportunity to be able to play with data in a very safe environment, but to try and speed up the whole business intelligence roles that we have here. So doing a map is fairly straightforward. We can also click as well, so I don't know if you can see that very well. I'll make it a bit bigger. People love maps. So we've got Redmond here. At the top, Redmond is just north of Bellevue. Bellevue is just here. And then we've got Seattle over the other side. I've been here a few times, and the view as you go across that bridge is just incredible. If you ever go across Seattle, it's something nice to do. So we can start to have a look at the aggressive drivers. We can see perhaps if there's something to do with the model of car. So I'm just going to copy and paste this one again. Now, what you tend to find is people tend to nail things in a dashboard together, just the way I've done here. But actually, there's a bit more of a science about it. I'm going to show you golden rectangle. I talked about this in a blog post. Okay. What's on me? Golden ratio. Got a very, very specific one that I'm looking for, which I can't see. All right, well, I can point you to it later. But the idea is a Fibonacci sequence. Take my name out, maybe that would help. There, that's it. That's the one. So basically what happens is when people start, I don't know if you see that very well, so you make it bigger. It's better. People often start by putting a dashboard, and they might sometimes do like 4 rectangles. But what you should actually do is think about using something like the golden rectangle. There's some evidence to show that this is a very natural, harmonious process. It's obviously a lot of harmony in nature. But what you find is this underpins a lot of website design. The idea is the most important bit gets the highest amount of space, and then you can start to half the size down. And then that draws the eyes towards what tends to be the most important bit that you want people to see. So if sometimes what I do with customers is I'll give them like a template of this, and we'll do it in Excel. We'll just sort of try and lay it out. And it's about getting people to think about what they want to see in the screen. And it's about data storytelling. How do you tell a good story with data? So that is very, very useful. If you're interested in knowing which chart to use, chart bigger, say that, this one. Right. Okay, so this is a good place to start, and his name is, the website is Extreme Presentation, and the gentleman's name is Dr. Abella, Andrew Abella. I want to give him particular credit for generating this. There's a lot of thought gone into it. I noticed one of the, anyway, I sometimes see this replicated, and it doesn't give him the credit that I think he deserves, and it annoys me. So that's why. Somebody who regularly gets this stuff taken off the internet is not a very nice experience. So you start in the middle. What would you like to show? So composition. We've got pie charts down here, area charts, column charts. Power BI does most of these. It does waterfall charts as well. And then we've got distribution. Do I want to show the distribution, particularly over time? So very simple line charts. Again, Power BI will do most of these. There'll be scatter charts as well, and we've got column histograms too. Now, if you're showing time, a line is better. Histograms, sometimes you lose the detail. We've got something in data visualization, it's a very loose guideline, it's not a rule. It's called the data ink ratio. And what that means is you're trying to show the most amount of data using the least amount of ink. It's not always true, there will be the edge cases where it doesn't work. But it's a general rule, it's a general guideline, it's a good thing to think about. It means that if you are giving people a very busy dashboard, but you're giving them fine lines like a line graph, it means they get the picture or the message of the data a bit more clearly. You notice with Power BI and with other technologies such as Tableau, you don't see 3D visualization at all, so it's not in Power BI. The reason for that is not everyone can see it very well. It also distorts basically when you do visualization, you want the quantity, the size, the line, the height, whatever it happens to be, you want that to be to correlate truthfully with the value of the data. And if you start to use 3D, you're starting to stretch it a little bit, and it's not always obvious, and not everyone can see it, so that's why it's not there. So a thing to try is if you, next time you do a line chart with the axes along it, normally you do the smaller values at the left-hand side and the bigger values at the right. So if you were doing a chart showing the years 2000 to 2015, 2000 would start on your left side and 2015 would go through to the right. If you try to swap those around, it will feel very uncomfortable, it will feel weird. You know, because we tend to see values going from the left to the right-hand side has been increasing in value. So there is some value in knowing some of this data visualization principles, particularly when you're trying to visualize complex data that you've got in Cortana Analytics, for example. So comparison. Now, if you're interested in reading more about data visualization, the gentleman you want to read, his name is Stephen Few, Stephen with a PH and Few as in F-E-W. He has a quote in one of his books, "Comparison is the beating heart of analytics." Because what happens is people start to look at the values, then they start to want to compare. Tell me month on month, what's year on year, what's the average, what's the maximum values. People start to think like that. For comparison, we've got bar charts, we've got what are called trellis charts or lattice charts. And what they are basically charts of charts. And you can have lots of bar charts in a sequence, in a grid basically, and those are just called lattice charts. It means that you can compare values very quickly, vertically and horizontally, because we're used to, you know, scanning things horizontally. It's what we do when we're reading and looking up and down. It's easier to do that than it is to compare area. We're not very good at area or angles, and that's why we're not very good at pie charts always. And I see people reading them wrongly all the time. Pie charts are a thing in data visualization. Not everybody likes them, but they are overused and they are everywhere. Power BI has got them as well. So we've got scatter charts and bubble charts in Power BI. We can make those move over time. You know, I've shown that to customers for a few years now. I don't think I've ever seen anybody actually use it meaningfully. They use it as they get excited with Power BI because they can make their data move. But once they have done that, it's like, well, I made my data move. It's not really showing me anything, and it tends to get dropped a little bit. But the idea is that there are patterns in the motion of the data which we can't see unless it starts to move. If you are interested in YouTube and you watch, a gentleman to watch is called Hans Rosling. He did a series a while ago on BBC4, The Joy of Stats, and he is an amazing presenter and he does some really wonderful things around motion charts and getting data moving. It's only 5 minutes of your time on YouTube. It's that or watching something in Mashable or something like that, then it's probably a better use of everyone's time. Right, so coming back to Power BI, I've published this here. Now, I don't have any here, but it is possible. I'm going to add in, put one here. There's some visuals in here, and import from a file. Now, normally, I don't have it in this one because it needs to update. I'm just going to update it now. Since I'm here, I may as well. Now, it's possible to use R with Power BI. So R at the moment is a very hot language. People are very excited about R. I'm going to cancel that. I'll do that later. But normally you would see the R logo in here.
Possibly you had to enable that feature.
I don't think I've uploaded Power BI for a while, so if you bear with me. So normally you see it there. I need to do some updates. I've not done it for a while. This is not my normal machine. My other one is not working at the minute. So the thing with R, using it in Power BI, is it only works on the desktop at the moment. It doesn't work in powerbi.com. The reason for that is that our service is not available yet with powerbi.com on the website. And my guess is they're going to have to do a lot of work in order to get R. Next to Power BI is a service that people can use. That's going to be a lot of processing power. It's going to be an extra module that people somewhere are going to have to pay for. So my guess is R will be eventually available in Power BI desktop, but not at this moment. So if you're interested in that, it's just something to bear in mind. I had a customer recently who did lots of stuff in R, and they were really disappointed they couldn't put it up, or you can't see the visuals properly in Power BI. So that's something to be aware of. Okay. So that's another reference to be aware of is the Abella one. I think that's a really useful one. Okay, so when we go back to this desktop here, we can see what they did with aggressively driven vehicles. Now, there's a few things here that are probably worth pointing out. Now, what if these sort of charts are incredibly popular, but they can be quite difficult to read? And the reason for that is normally you start with the axis down here. So when you use like a bar chart or a column chart, you can look up and down quite easily. But when we start to look at this one, we have to read the numbers in order to understand the data a little bit better. So it takes a bit more time for people to understand. Now, this one, the colours look really pretty, but can anyone work out what's wrong with them? No? You can use colour palettes in order to distinguish different things about the data. So if you use this is a graded colour palette. So normally you use a graded colour palette when you are distinguishing values of the same metric. So something like age. And normally people have a heuristic that says lighter values are, smaller values are lighter in colour. Darker colours, darker or brighter colours tend to represent higher values. So that would be more for continuous data like age. So you might show children as being a very light, a lighter colour, and then you might show senior citizens as being a darker colour. And what you're doing there is showing age is one metric, and we're using the colour in order to distinguish age groups. But what's wrong with this is actually categorical data. And categorical data is better represented by different colours. There's no gradation here between the compact car, the station wagon and the small SUV. They're actually different. The wagon would actually be bigger than this small SUV, but this is done more or less in order of the value. So it's done in descending order. So for that one, what you'd be best doing is a more categorical value. It becomes difficult to distinguish as well. I'm going to move that. So it's given as a colour saturation. We don't actually want that. So what we could do instead, we'll see if it will give us a model perhaps. See if that gives us anything different. Still gives us that. Oh well. So if you can imagine, it's got car models here, but if it was something like countries or something like that, it would be completely different colours. You'd have red, green, blue, whichever. And the idea is coming back to what I said earlier about comparison of data. And what happens is when we start to look at data or look at reports, our eyes start to bounce around. One of the first things we start to do is look at the legend and then the value, legend, value. And when you do eye tracking studies on people, you see that the eyes will bounce between the legend and the value, legend and the value. And it's easier to do that in categorical data if you've got different colours. So if compact car was red, it would be easier for you to say, okay, compact car is red. But because these are all the same colour, it becomes a bit more difficult to distinguish and to get past that sort of legend point. So that's something else that's interesting just to note about it. So what they've done here is they've put the value at the top here. We can also filter as well. So normally when you're building a building dashboards or reports, what you need to do is think about having a summary first, and then you zoom and filter on the data, and then you dive down to the detail. So that's the gentleman that you might want to go and look up for that. His name is Professor Ben Schneiderman. He's on YouTube, he's a very entertaining presenter. So he talks about, he's done a lot of research around this. It doesn't hold in every single case, as always. It's not like hard and fast rules. But people generally like a headline first, and then they like to know how they can zoom and filter. So that's where Power BI does a really nice job. We start to be able to zoom and filter on the aspects that we're interested in. Here I've just clicked on Bellevue, so I've just got Bellevue data. It also means that we've got one single pane of glass, so we are not having to move around two different worksheets or workbooks. We're just staying in the same place. It means there's less impedance between us and where we need to be. The final part is looking at the detail of the data. People often like to see the detail of the data. They like to dive down, but they don't always want to see it first. It's particularly in the days of big data, where we are no longer dealing with human scale data. We're dealing with very, very many data points. You don't always want the detail. So I think Power BI is doing a nice job of following that trajectory as well. So basically, when we're visualising data, there's a bit more to it. Got real-time vehicle health as well. So we should see these start to change. Okay. Now the interesting thing here again is the use of colour. Because what we have at the bottom here, and I need to double check this. We've got blue at the top here, a lighter blue, and a sort of orangey one, which is Seattle. But often when people are building a dashboard, they reuse the same colour to mean different things. And what you tend to find is with a heuristic that the same colour means the same thing. So if you look at like a Rubik's Cube, for example, I assume you all know what a Rubik's Cube is, you pick it up, you intuitively know what to do with it. You think, right, these colours should be in the right order. But what we find here is that we've got blue representing here average of engine temperature, but here it's averaging engine oil down here, not temperature. So they're reusing the same colour for different things, and that's not a good practice either, because when we read this sort of thing, we sort of assume, oh well, actually that means the same thing as these things, and actually they don't. So when you only see that when you filter on it and realise, actually I click on this blue bit here, and that is giving me data for Bellevue. It's not giving me blue, 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 blue. Does that make sense? So there's actually more to it with the colours. So it's very, very easy to knock up stuff in Power BI, but you can still make mistakes. So just be careful of conveying the message of the data. It's not all just about click, 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 tick, boom, lovely. It can still be wrong. Okay, so these are just things to bear in mind, and this is from the default Microsoft stuff. So hopefully that will help you not to do the same sort of things in the future. Don't be that person. Be the person that I am. I go along and I pick along with these things. Then, drop a bomb and leave someone else to sort it out, the data visualization. And they realise it's not very right after all. So with that, it's 5 minutes till lunch. Unless there's any questions, you can go and race ahead to get in the lunch queue and get the sandwiches a bit quicker. Anyone? All right. Well, enjoy your lunch and thank you for coming.